The council chamber felt colder when the meeting resumed the next day. Jake Morrison sat across from High Arbiter Velnathi and tried to read the alien's expression. The Zalithian's skin had shifted to a deep purple color that the translation guide said indicated serious determination. "Have the human representatives considered our proposal?" Velnathi asked. The mechanical voice from the translation device carried no emotion, but Jake sensed impatience in the alien's posture. Lisa Harper opened her diplomatic case and pulled out a datapad. She had spent most of the night preparing humanity's response. "We have reviewed your terms carefully. While we understand your concerns about galactic stability, we cannot accept modifications that would fundamentally alter human nature." Several aliens around the circle made the untranslatable sounds Jake had heard before. This time, the noise seemed louder and more agitated. Ben Carter leaned forward and activated his recording device. As the mission psychologist, he wanted to document every detail of the aliens' reactions. Something about their behavior patterns bothered him, but he could not identify exactly what felt wrong. "Perhaps we could discuss alternative approaches," Lisa continued. "Humans are willing to establish buffer zones around our colonies, share resources through trade agreements, and participate in joint exploration projects that could benefit all species." Velnathi's 4 arms moved in sharp, angular patterns that were very different from the flowing gestures Jake had seen before. "Such proposals demonstrate precisely why humans are classified as a threat. You cannot conceive of absolute limits. Every suggestion involves expansion, growth, or increased human presence in the galaxy." Jake felt frustration building in his chest. "Growth is natural for any living species. Plants grow toward light. Animals expand into new territories when they can. Why should sapient beings be different?" "Because unchecked growth leads to resource depletion and conflict," replied a new voice. Another alien had joined the conversation, this one covered in what looked like metallic scales that shifted between silver and gold colors. "I am Coordinator Zaxtel of the Hegemony Worlds. My species learned this lesson 3,000 years ago." Ben made notes on his tablet as Zaxtel continued speaking. The alien's voice carried what sounded like sadness, though the translation device might have been adding emotional context that was not really there. "The hegemony once behaved much like humans do now. We expanded rapidly, established colonies, wherever we found suitable worlds, and believed that growth was our natural right." The metallic scales on Zaxtel's body dimmed to a darker shade. "Within 5 centuries, we had exhausted the resources of our home system and triggered wars with 6 neighboring species." Lisa shifted in her chair. "What happened to your people?" "The collective intervened. They offered us the same choice now presented to humans: accept modification and join galactic civilization or face containment." Zaxtel gestured with 2 clawed hands. "We chose wisdom. Our genetic code was altered to reduce competitive instincts and limit reproduction. Our population was capped at sustainable levels. We learned to find satisfaction in stability rather than growth." Jake stared at the alien. "They changed what you were. They helped us become what we needed to be for galactic peace." Ben looked up from his tablet. "Do you miss it? The drive to grow and explore?" Zaxtel was quiet for a long moment. "One cannot miss what one is no longer capable of feeling." The words sent a chill through Jake's body. He looked around the room at all the different alien species, suddenly seeing them in a new light. How many had once been like humans? How many had been modified to fit the collective's vision of peace? Velnathi spoke again. "The hegemony's transformation was successful because they chose cooperation. Forced modification is more difficult and less precise, but the collective has the technology to implement it if necessary." Lisa's voice remained steady, but Jake could see tension in her hands. "What would forced modification involve? Atmospheric agents to alter brain chemistry? Genetic viruses to modify reproductive systems? neural implants to regulate emotional responses. The High Arbiter listed the options as if reading from a shopping list. The process would take several years to complete, but the results would be permanent. Jake stood up so quickly that his chair fell backward. Several aliens flinched at the sudden movement, and he realized they were not used to unpredictable behavior. You are talking about destroying our species and replacing it with something else. We are talking about helping your species survive, Velnathi replied. Unmodified humans will not be permitted to continue their current expansion patterns. If you refuse voluntary integration, you will be contained by force. Ben was frantically taking notes. What does containment mean exactly? Another alien answered, this one resembling a large insect with multiple eyes. Quarantine barriers around all human systems. Destruction of any ships that attempt to leave designated areas. Elimination of colonies beyond approved boundaries. The translation device somehow managed to make the words sound reasonable and matter-of-fact, but Jake felt sick hearing them. The aliens were discussing the imprisonment of the entire human race as if it were a minor administrative matter. Lisa tried one more diplomatic approach. Surely there must be some middle ground. Humans could accept limited growth restrictions in exchange for membership in the collective without genetic modification. Impossible, Velnathi said immediately. Unmodified humans cannot be trusted to honor long-term agreements. Your species lacks the biological capacity for true cooperation. You compete when you should collaborate. You take risks when you should choose safety. You change when you should remain stable. Jake realized that the alien was not being insulting. In Velnathi's mind, these were simply factual observations about human nature. The problem was that everything the alien listed as a flaw was something Jake considered essential to being human. Our nature is not a disease that needs to be cured, Jake said. To the rest of the galaxy it is, replied Zaxtel. Humans represent chaos in a system built on order. Your unpredictability threatens the stability that has prevented galactic wars for 12 millennia. Ben looked up from his notes. Has the collective ever encountered a species that refused both modification and containment? The room fell silent. Jake noticed that several aliens looked uncomfortable with the question, their body language shifting in subtle ways. Velnathi finally answered. 3 species in collective history have chosen to resist rather than accept integration. None of them survived the experience. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jake felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He was not just negotiating for himself or his crew. The decisions made in this room would determine the fate of every human being in the galaxy. Lisa closed her diplomatic case with a soft click. We need to return to Earth and present these options to our government. This is not a decision we can make alone. You have 11 months remaining, Velnathi said. The Collective Council has been generous in allowing so much. Time for consideration. Many members argued for immediate containment measures. As they prepared to leave the council chamber, Jake noticed something that had escaped his attention before. The aliens all moved in similar patterns, spoke with similar rhythms, and reacted to situations in predictable ways. Despite representing dozens of different species, they seemed to share fundamental behavioral traits. Ben had noticed it too. As they walked back toward their ship, he spoke quietly to avoid being overheard by any alien monitoring devices. They are all the same. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Different bodies, different faces, but they think alike. They act alike. They have been modified so extensively that they have lost individual species characteristics. Jake felt another chill. They want to do that to us. Not just to us, Ben said. I think they have done it to everyone. The collective is not a cooperation between different species. It is one artificial culture wearing many different faces. As they boarded the UES Horizon, Jake looked back at the beautiful, peaceful space station. Everything about it represented order, harmony, and cooperation. It should have been inspiring, but instead it felt like a tomb. The aliens were offering humanity a choice between modification and extinction. What they did not understand was that from a human perspective, both options led to the same result. Either way, humanity as a free, growing, chaotic species would cease to exist. Jake settled into his command chair as the ship undocked from Haven's Rest. Lieutenant Walsh engaged the engines and set course for Earth. They had 11 months to prepare humanity for the most important decision in its history. "Commander," Amy Rodriguez said from the tactical station, "I have been analyzing the alien ships around the station. Their technology is definitely superior to ours, but there is something strange about their configurations." "What kind of strange?" Jake asked. "They are designed for maximum efficiency and minimum risk. No redundant systems, no backup weapons, no provisions for damage control." Amy paused, studying her readings. "It is like they have never had to fight a real war." Jake thought about that as Earth grew larger on the view screen. Maybe the aliens had been too successful in creating their peaceful galaxy. Maybe they had forgotten what it meant to face an enemy willing to accept terrible losses in exchange for freedom. If that was true, then human Admiral Robert Hayes stood in the command center on Luna Base and watched construction crews work on the new defense platforms. 6 months had passed since the UES Horizon returned from the alien meeting, and humanity had spent every day preparing for war. The news from the collective had spread across Earth and the colonies within hours of Jake Morrison's return. President Maria Santos had addressed the United Nations 3 days later, and her words were simple. Humanity would not accept genetic modification or population limits. They would not surrender their colonies or abandon their dreams of expansion among the stars. "Admiral, the new shipyard at Ceres is reporting completion of the 5th Destroyer Squadron," said Colonel Steve Parker, walking into the command center with a tablet full of production reports. Steve had been promoted from his research position to oversee all weapons development for the Earth Defense Coalition. Robert nodded and marked the information on his strategic display. "That gives us 87 combat vessels. The aliens probably have thousands." "Quality over quantity might work in our favor," Steve replied, though he did not sound convinced. "Our new weapon systems pack more punch than anything we had before the collective contact." The irony was not lost on Robert. Humanity's greatest technological leap forward had come from studying alien devices during the diplomatic meetings. Hidden scanners and recording equipment had captured enough data for human engineers to make breakthrough advances in power generation, weapon efficiency, and shield technology. Dr. Lisa Harper entered the command center carrying a thick folder of intelligence reports. She had been working with analysis teams to understand everything they had learned about alien technology and psychology during the failed negotiations. "Any new insights about their capabilities?" Robert asked. Lisa opened her folder and pulled out several photographs. "We have identified 43 different ship types in their fleet formations. Each one appears to be optimized for specific functions with no overlap or redundancy. It suggests a very organized approach to warfare." Steve studied the images. "Organized can be predictable. Our ships are designed to be flexible and adaptable in combat situations." "There is something else," Lisa continued. "Ben Carter has been analyzing the behavioral patterns we observed during the meetings. He thinks the collective species have been modified so extensively that they may have lost the ability to think creatively or adapt to unexpected situations." Robert found that idea both hopeful and terrifying. Meaning they might not be able to respond effectively to unconventional tactics? Or meaning they will respond by escalating to levels of force we cannot imagine, Lisa replied. "A species that has eliminated chaos from their thinking might see total destruction as a logical solution to a problem they cannot solve otherwise." The discussion was interrupted by an urgent message from General Patricia Wells on Mars. Her image appeared on the main communication screen, and Robert could see the stress lines around her eyes that had not been there 6 months ago. "Admiral, we have finished evacuating the outer colonies as planned. 7 million people have been relocated to the inner systems, though many refuse to leave their homes." Patricia paused, and Robert knew she was thinking about the families who had chosen to stay behind in the danger zones. "How are the fortification projects proceeding?" Robert asked. "Mars will be ready. We have converted the terraforming equipment into planetary defense systems, and the colony domes can be sealed for extended siege conditions. If the aliens want this planet, they will have to pay a heavy price for it." Captain Ryan Murphy appeared on another communication channel from his intelligence post near Jupiter. Ryan had been working with communication specialists to intercept and decode collective signals throughout the solar system. "Admiral, I have updates on alien fleet movements," Ryan said. His voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had not slept properly in weeks. "Long-range sensors show massive ship formations assembling at the edge of known space. Conservative estimates put their numbers at over 2,000 vessels." Steve whistled softly. 2,000 ships against our 87. The mathematics are not encouraging. "Mathematics assume both sides are playing by the same rules," Robert replied. "We need to make sure this war is fought on our terms, not theirs." Lisa looked up from her reports. "What do you mean?" Robert walked to the strategic display and highlighted human positions throughout the solar system. "The aliens expect us to meet them in open space battles where their technological advantages will be decisive. Instead, we are going to make them come to us, fight for every asteroid, every moon, every colony." "A siege strategy," Patricia said from Mars. "Force them to pay in blood for every inch of space." "Exactly. And while they are grinding through, our defenses, our shipyards will keep building more vessels. Human industrial capacity is one advantage they may have underestimated." Steve activated his own display showing production schedules. "The new automated factories on Titan are coming online next month. If we can buy enough time, we might be able to match their numbers eventually." Ryan spoke up from his communication post. "There is something else you should know. I have been monitoring communications between collective species, and there seems to be disagreement about how to handle the human situation." "What kind of disagreement?" Robert asked. "Some species want to proceed with containment measures immediately. Others are arguing for more time to find a peaceful solution. A few seem to be questioning whether humans are really as dangerous as the initial assessment claimed." Lisa leaned forward with interest. "That could be significant. If we can create divisions within the collective, it might give us more options than just military resistance." Robert nodded. "What about our infiltration operations?" Ryan smiled for the first time in the conversation. "Better than expected. We have placed agents on 17 different collective worlds during the past 6 months. Most of them are posing as trade representatives or cultural observers, but they have access to critical information about alien society and military capabilities. The infiltration program had been one of humanity's most ambitious intelligence operations. Using the diplomatic access granted during the failed negotiations, human agents had spread throughout collective space. Their mission was to gather information, identify weaknesses, and prepare for sabotage operations if war became inevitable. "Have they discovered anything useful?" Steve asked. "The collective species are more vulnerable than they appear," Ryan replied. 12,000 years of peace have made them complacent about security. Their infrastructure is efficient but fragile. A few well-placed disruptions could cause significant problems." Patricia spoke from Mars. "What about their military experience? Have they fought any real wars recently?" Lisa checked her files. According to their own historical records, the last major conflict was over 8,000 years ago. Since then, they have only dealt with what they call containment operations against individual species, meaning they have not faced an organized resistance in millennia, Robert realized. They know how to defeat isolated opponents, but they may not remember how to fight a total war. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert from the perimeter monitoring stations. Lieutenant Kate Walsh appeared on the communication screen from her post on the UES Horizon, which was now serving as a long-range patrol vessel. "Admiral, we are detecting massive gravitational disturbances at the edge of the solar system. Something big is coming through hyperspace." Robert felt his stomach tighten. "How big?" "Multiple contacts, sir. I count at least 50 ships, possibly more. They are still too far away for detailed scans, but the energy signatures match collective technology." Steve checked his tactical displays. "It is too early. We still have 5 months left in their ultimatum." "Maybe they decided not to wait," Patricia said grimly. Robert began issuing orders to his command staff. "All defense platforms to alert status. Notify all colony commanders to begin evacuation procedures. Get our mobile fleets into position between the outer planets and Earth." As the command center erupted into controlled chaos, Robert thought about the choice humanity had made. They could have accepted modification and lived as pets in the collective's peaceful galaxy. Instead, they had chosen to fight for their freedom against overwhelming odds. Lisa was still studying her intelligence reports. "Admiral, there is one more thing. According to Ben Carter's psychological analysis, the collective species seem to have genuine difficulty understanding why we would choose war over survival." "What do you mean?" "To them, our refusal to accept modification is completely irrational. They cannot comprehend why anyone would choose death over a peaceful existence, even if that existence requires giving up everything that makes life worth living." Robert looked at the tactical display showing human defenses scattered throughout the solar system. 87 ships against thousands, orbital platforms against planet killers, human determination against alien technology. "Maybe that is our real advantage," he said. "They do not understand us, but we are beginning to understand them. They have optimized their civilization for peace and efficiency. We have spent our entire history learning how to fight and survive against impossible odds." The first shots of the war were fired at 0347 hours on a Tuesday morning. Admiral Robert Hayes watched from Luna Base as streaks of energy lit up the darkness between Jupiter and Saturn. The collective fleet had arrived in overwhelming force. Just as the intelligence reports had predicted, Captain Frank Rodriguez commanded the CSS Defiance, leading humanity's first line of defense near the outer gas giants. His ship was one of the new destroyers equipped with experimental weapons based on captured alien technology. Against a collective dreadnought 3 times its size, the outcome should have been predictable. "Defiance is engaging the enemy lead ship," reported Lieutenant Walsh from her position at the communication console. Her voice remained steady despite the impossible odds they were all watching unfold. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The CSS Defiance managed to damage the alien vessel's shields before being vaporized by a concentrated barrage that turned the human ship into expanding gas and debris. 43 crew members died in humanity's first exchange with the collective fleet. "Sir, the alien formation is continuing toward the inner system," Walsh reported. "They are maintaining perfect spacing and coordination, no deviation from standard tactical doctrine." Steve Parker stood beside Robert, studying tactical displays that showed the overwhelming disparity in forces. "They fight like a computer simulation. Every movement is calculated for maximum efficiency." "That might be our advantage," Robert replied, though he felt sick watching the alien fleet advance with mechanical precision. "Computers are predictable. Let them think they understand how this war will go." The collective fleet moved through the outer system like a tide of destruction, sweeping aside the scattered human patrol ships with contemptuous ease. High Arbiter Velnathi broadcast surrender demands every hour, each message offering humanity one final chance to accept modification rather than face extinction. Robert ignored the messages and activated the first phase of humanity's real strategy. "All units, implement Protocol Chaos. Repeat, implement Protocol Chaos." Throughout the solar system, human commanders received the signal they had been waiting for. The conventional fleet engagement had been a deception, designed to make the aliens confident in their tactical superiority. Now the real war would begin. Commander Jake Morrison, transferred from diplomatic duties to military command, led the first unconventional strike from his base in the asteroid belt. His target was not an alien warship, but the mining station, at Ceres that had been rigged with nuclear explosives. "Detonation in 10 seconds, Jake announced to his crew. "All ships clear the blast radius." The explosion lit up half the solar system. Ceres vanished in a ball of nuclear fire that consumed 12 alien ships attempting to secure the facility. The blast sent radioactive debris across millions of miles of space, creating navigation hazards that would persist for decades. High Arbiter Velnathi's next message carried something that had not been present before: confusion. Human commanders, the destruction of your own infrastructure serves no tactical purpose. This wasteful behavior will not prevent your defeat. Dr. Ben Carter, monitoring the communications from Earth, smiled as he analyzed the alien response. They do not understand. Scorched Earth tactics. The concept of denying resources to an enemy by destroying them is completely foreign to their thinking. Amy Rodriguez had been promoted to colonel and placed in command of the Mars Defense Forces. Her ships did not engage the approaching alien fleet directly. Instead, they focused on targets the aliens had not expected: their own supply lines and communication networks. "Colonel Rodriguez reporting successful strike on alien supply convoy," came her voice over the communication system. "We destroyed their cargo vessels and let the escort ships escape. The aliens are having to divert combat units to protect logistics operations." Robert nodded with satisfaction. The collective had planned for a conventional war between organized fleets. They had not prepared for an enemy willing to target civilian infrastructure, sacrifice their own installations, and ignore traditional rules of engagement. Captain Ryan Murphy's intelligence networks began activating throughout collective space. Human agents, embedded during the diplomatic phase, started their sabotage operations on dozens of alien worlds. The damage was not militarily significant, but the psychological impact was devastating. Reporting successful operations on 7 collective worlds, Ryan announced during the daily intelligence briefing. "Our agents have disrupted power grids, contaminated water supplies, and introduced computer viruses into their information networks. The aliens are calling it terrorism." "Good," Robert replied coldly. "Terror is a weapon they have never had to face before. The war's first major battle took place in the asteroid belt, where General Patricia Wells had prepared a killing field, among the tumbling rocks and debris. The collective fleet approached in perfect formation, expecting to sweep aside human resistance with their superior firepower. Instead, they found themselves fighting the asteroids themselves. Human engineers had turned hundreds of rocks into improvised weapons, equipping them with engines and warheads. The asteroids attacked in chaotic swarms that overwhelmed alien targeting systems designed for organized opponents. Enemy fleet taking significant casualties in the belt, Patricia reported. They are trying to maintain formation discipline, but the random attack vectors are causing coordination failures. Steve Parker's weapons teams had developed something they called the Darwin Protocol, adaptive systems that evolved during combat. Unlike collective technology that followed predictable upgrade paths, human weapons incorporated random mutations and deliberate inefficiencies that confused enemy analysis. "The aliens keep adapting to our weapons," Steve explained to Robert during a strategy meeting. "So we built weapons that adapt faster than they can analyze them. Every shot learns from the previous one and changes accordingly." As the first month of war ended, the collective found themselves facing something unprecedented in 12,000 years of galactic peace, an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Human tactics violated every principle of civilized warfare, treating their own lives and resources as expendable in pursuit of inflicting maximum damage on the enemy. High Arbiter Velnathi requested emergency reinforcements from the Collective Council. The human resistance was proving far more costly than projected, and their unpredictable methods were causing coordination problems throughout the fleet. The humans fight like animals, Velnathi reported to the Council. They sacrifice entire installations to destroy single ships. They target non-military objectives. They show no regard for acceptable casualty ratios or resource preservation protocols. The Council's response was swift: authorization for planet-killer weapons and total sterilization protocols. If humans could not be contained by conventional means, they would be eliminated entirely. Jake Morrison intercepted the authorization codes during a raid on an alien communication relay. The message was clear. The Collective had decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist in any form. They are going to try to destroy Earth, Jake reported to Admiral Hayes. Not conquer it, not occupy it. Complete sterilization of all human worlds. Robert felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in the command center. How long before they can implement those weapons? Unknown, but probably weeks rather than months. The aliens are bringing in their most advanced ships from the galactic core. Lisa Harper, now serving as humanity's chief intelligence analyst, had been studying collective behavior patterns throughout the conflict. There is something important we need to understand about their psychology. They are not evil or cruel. They genuinely believe they are protecting galactic civilization from a threat that cannot be reasoned with or contained. Ben Carter agreed. From their perspective, we are a disease that needs to be eliminated for the greater good. They feel no hatred toward us, just the same way a surgeon feels no hatred toward a cancer. The realization was somehow worse than facing an enemy motivated by anger or revenge. The Collective was going to destroy humanity with the calm efficiency they applied to all their decisions. There would be no mercy, no last-minute reprieve, no recognition of human value or potential. Then we need to make them understand that this disease has teeth, Robert said grimly. Amy Rodriguez's forces on Mars had been preparing for exactly this scenario. The planet's terraforming equipment was converted into weapons capable of affecting an entire star system. If the aliens wanted to sterilize human worlds, they would discover that humans could make the cost unbearable. Mars Command to Luna Base, Amy reported. We are ready to implement the Samson Protocol on your orders. Robert knew what the Samson Protocol meant. If Earth was about to be destroyed, Mars would detonate its entire nuclear arsenal simultaneously, creating an energy pulse that would cripple alien ships throughout the inner solar system. The planet would die, but it would take a significant portion of the collective fleet with it. As reports came in from across human space, Robert realized that the war had reached a turning point. The aliens had expected to face a conventional opponent who would surrender when the costs became too high. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy willing to embrace mutual destruction rather than accept defeat. The Collective had declared humanity a T 3 months into the war. The Collective controlled most of human space, but their casualties had reached levels not seen in 8,000 years. High. Arbiter Velnathi stood in the command center of the dreadnought Eternal Harmony and studied reports that defied every military projection the Council had approved. Status report on human resistance activities, Velnathi requested from the tactical coordinator. Sector 7. Human guerrilla forces destroyed 3 supply convoys using improvised explosive devices. Sector 12. Sabotage teams contaminated our water reclamation systems on 4 occupied stations. Sector 9. Human civilians continue refusing relocation orders despite threat of force. Velnathi's skin shifted to a darker purple shade that indicated stress. Every human world had become a fortress, every civilian a potential combatant. The mathematical models that had predicted quick victory were useless against an enemy that treated impossible odds as motivation rather than deterrent. General Patricia Wells had transformed Mars into humanity's most deadly weapon. Hidden in The deep canyons and underground colonies, her forces had turned the entire planet into a trap. The collective fleet surrounded Mars, but taking control of the surface was proving impossible. "Enemy bombardment is continuing," reported Major Danny Torres from his position in the command bunker beneath Olympus Mons. "They have been hitting the same targets for 6 hours without realizing we moved all critical systems underground months." Ago. Patricia studied the tactical displays showing alien landing forces struggling against Martian defenders. They keep using the same attack patterns. No adaptation, no creativity, just repeated application of superior firepower. The problem for the collective was that superior firepower meant nothing against an enemy willing to die for every meter of ground. Human defenders used the planet itself as a weapon, triggering landslides, redirecting underground rivers, and turning the atmospheric processors into planet-wide chemical weapons. Commander Jake Morrison had been fighting a different kind of war from his mobile base in the outer asteroid belt. His ships never engaged the alien fleet directly, instead targeting the support systems that kept the massive collective armada functioning in human space. "Strike Team Alpha reports successful destruction of alien fuel depot at coordinates 247891, Jake announced to his scattered fleet. "That is the third supply base destroyed this week. The aliens are having to escort every cargo shipment with combat vessels." The genius of human tactics was not in the individual strikes, but in the cumulative effect on collective psychology. Dr. Ben Carter, monitoring alien communications from his intelligence post on Europa, could hear the strain in their coordination protocols. "The aliens are starting to make mistakes," Ben reported during the daily briefing. "Their communication patterns show increasing stress markers. Several commanders have requested relief from duty due to what they call adaptive fatigue." Admiral A. Robert Hayes smiled grimly at the report. Adaptive fatigue was a polite way of describing what happened when a perfectly ordered mind encountered pure chaos. The collective species had been modified to eliminate psychological stress responses, but they had never faced an enemy designed to cause maximum mental disruption. Captain Ryan Murphy's intelligence networks were providing the most valuable insights into alien vulnerabilities. Human agents throughout collective space were reporting unprecedented social unrest as news of the war spread among species that had known only peace for millennia. "Multiple sources confirm widespread questioning of collective leadership," Ryan reported from his secure communication post. "Several member species are asking why the human containment operation has required such extensive military resources." The answer was simple but devastating to collective unity. Humans were proving that forced peace was just another form of tyranny. Every act of resistance, every refusal to surrender, every willingness to die rather than submit was a message to the galaxy that alternatives to collective control were possible. Dr. Lisa Harper had been studying captured alien technology and personnel, making discoveries that changed humanity's understanding of their enemy. The interrogation facilities on Titan held 17 collective prisoners, each one providing crucial insights into the psychology of galactic civilization. "The genetic modifications run deeper than we realized," Lisa explained to the command staff during a strategic planning session. "They have not just eliminated aggression and competition, they have removed the biological capacity for innovation, risk-taking, and individual initiative." Steve Parker looked up from his weapons development reports. "That explains why their technology is so advanced but so rigid. They can perfect existing designs, but they cannot create truly new concepts." Exactly. Which means our adaptive weapons and chaotic tactics are not just militarily effective, they are psychologically incomprehensible to the alien mind. The implications were staggering. Humanity was not just fighting a war for survival. They were challenging the fundamental principles that had governed galactic civilization for 12,000 years. Every human victory proved that chaos could defeat order, that freedom was worth any price, that growth was more important than stability. Colonel Amy Rodriguez had been defending Earth itself from her command post in the Lunar Defense Network. The planet had become the symbol of human resistance, and the aliens were determined to capture it intact as a demonstration of collective power. Alien fleet is maintaining orbital bombardment patterns, Amy reported. They are trying to force surrender through infrastructure destruction, but civilian morale remains high. The siege of Earth had lasted 2 months, but humanity showed no signs of breaking. Cities lay in ruins, but the survivors continued broadcasting defiance messages throughout the galaxy. Children sang songs about human heroes fighting impossible odds. Artists created works celebrating freedom over safety. President Maria Santos had refused evacuation from the White House, instead converting the building into a symbol of human determination. Her daily broadcasts reached every corner of human space and beyond, carrying a message that terrified the collective leadership. "We are not fighting for territory or resources," Santos declared in her latest address. "We are fighting for the right to be human, the right to grow, to explore, to make mistakes, to choose our own destiny among the stars." The broadcasts were being intercepted throughout collective space, where species that had forgotten the concept of choice were hearing it explained for the first time in millennia. Intelligence reports suggested that several member worlds were beginning to question their own genetic modifications and population controls. High Arbiter Velnathi requested an emergency session with the Collective Council. The human war was spreading beyond military objectives into something far more dangerous, a philosophical challenge to the entire structure of galactic civilization. The humans have introduced a contamination agent into our information networks. Velnathi reported to the assembled representatives of 47 species. Their broadcasts are causing ideological instability among populations that have been peaceful for thousands of years. The Council's response was immediate. Complete communication blackout throughout collective space. No information about the human war would be allowed to reach civilian populations. The contamination had to be contained before it spread further, but the blackout came too late. Human agents had been preparing for exactly this scenario, establishing hidden communication, networks that could bypass official channels. Ryan Murphy's intelligence operation activated sleeper cells on dozens of worlds, ensuring that the message of human resistance continued to spread. Jake Morrison received reports from across the galaxy that would have been impossible to imagine. When the war began, on the hegemony worlds, citizens were asking why their reproductive rights had been restricted. On Zilithian colonies, young people were questioning why they could not choose their own careers and living arrangements. The aliens created their perfect peace by eliminating everything that makes life worth living, Jake observed during a strategy meeting with his command staff. "We are showing them what they gave up in exchange for stability." General Wells coordinated the final defense of Mars as collective forces prepared for a massive ground assault. The planet would fall eventually, but the cost would be enormous. More importantly, the example would inspire resistance throughout human space and beyond. "All units, prepare for final defensive positions," Patricia announced to her forces scattered across the planet. "Remember, we are not fighting to win. We are fighting to prove that humans cannot be conquered by force." The battle for Mars began at dawn on the 127th day of the war. Collective forces landed in overwhelming numbers, supported by orbital bombardment and atmospheric control systems. Human defenders should have been swept aside within hours. Instead, they fought for every building, every street, every room. Martian civilians joined the battle, using improvised weapons and suicide tactics that horrified alien soldiers bred for efficient warfare. The planet became a graveyard for both sides, but the psychological impact reached far beyond military calculations. Dr. Carter intercepted alien communications that revealed the true extent of the damage hum. Captain Jake Martinez walked across the metal floor of his ship's bridge. His boots made loud sounds on the steel plates that had been welded together by hand. The HSS Defiance was not like other ships in space, where alien vessels were smooth and shiny. His ship looked like someone had built it from spare parts found in a junkyard. Jake stopped next to the main viewing window and looked out at the 3 alien ships floating nearby. The Corvin hegemony had sent their best officers to inspect the human warship. Jake could see them through the clear metal of their transport ships. They wore fancy uniforms and carried themselves like they owned the entire galaxy. "Captain, the aliens are not happy with what they see," said Commander Lisa Thompson. She was the chief engineer and had been working on the ship for 3 years. Her hands were always dirty from fixing things, and her uniform had burn marks from welding accidents. Jake nodded. He had expected this reaction. The Corvin delegation had been walking through his ship for 2 hours. Every few minutes he could hear them talking in their strange, clicking language. Even without understanding their words, he knew they were not impressed. The leader of the alien group was Admiral Zethkar. He was tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 arms. His uniform was made from some kind of crystal material that seemed to glow with its own light. When he looked at human technology, his face showed pure disgust. "Sir, they just finished looking at our weapons room," Lisa whispered. "I heard one of them say our guns look like something a child would build." Jake smiled. Let them think that. The aliens had no idea what they were really looking at. The Defiance carried weapons that no other species in the galaxy had ever seen. But to alien eyes, they just looked like crude metal tubes attached to simple computers. The Corvin hegemony ruled over 40 different worlds. Their ships were works of art built from living crystal that could repair itself. Their weapons fired pure energy that could cut through any known material. Their technology was so advanced that most species worshipped them like gods. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for 5 years. Earth was given membership in the Galactic Council because the planet had rare metals that everyone needed. But nobody expected humans to be anything more than miners and suppliers. Jake remembered his first meeting with alien leaders. They had looked at him like he was a pet that had learned to walk on 2 legs. The human military was considered a joke. Their ships were built from steel and powered by nuclear reactors. Compared to crystalline energy cores and gravity manipulation, human technology seemed primitive. "Captain, Admiral Zethkar wants to speak with you," said Lieutenant Danny Cooper from the communications station. Danny was young but had proved himself to be the best weapons officer in the human fleet. His family had been building guns for 6 generations, and he understood how to make things explode better than anyone Jake had ever met. "Put him on the main screen," Jake said. The face of Admiral Zethkar appeared on the display. His 4 eyes moved independently as he studied the human bridge. Behind him, Jake could see the interior of a Corvin warship. Everything was made from smooth crystal that pulsed with soft light. There were no visible controls or buttons. The aliens controlled their ships through direct mental connection. "Captain Martinez," Zethkar said in perfect English, "I have completed my inspection of your vessel." "And what did you think?" Jake asked. "I think," Zethkar paused, "that your species has a very different approach to engineering." Jake could hear the insult hidden in those words. Different was alien speak for backward, primitive, and stupid. "We build things to last," Jake replied, "and to keep working even when they should not." "Yes, I noticed your excessive use of backup systems," Zethkar said. "Why do you need 3 different ways to fire your weapons?" "Because sometimes the first 2 ways break," Jake answered honestly. This seemed to confuse the alien admiral. Corvin technology did not break. Their ships had been running for hundreds of years without needing repairs. The idea that technology might fail was foreign to them. "Your weapons are also unusual," Zethkar continued. "I have never seen anything like your kinetic projectile systems." "You mean our guns? If that is what you call devices that throw pieces of metal at high speed, then yes." Jake noticed that several other Corvin officers had gathered behind their admiral. They were all staring at the human bridge with the same expression of confused disgust. "Captain," Zethkar said, May I ask why your species chooses to use such crude methods when energy weapons are clearly superior? Energy weapons are great, Jake agreed. But metal bullets work even when the power goes out. The aliens exchanged looks. The concept of power failure was as foreign to them as the idea of breathing underwater was to humans. Dr. Amy Foster, the ship's science officer, stepped forward. She had been listening to the conversation while studying readings from her instruments. Admiral Zethkar, Amy said, our scans show that your ships are incredibly advanced. Your crystalline technology is beyond anything we have on Earth. The alien admiral seemed pleased by this acknowledgement. The Corvan hegemony has perfected the art of warfare over 1,000 years. Our ships are invincible. I am sure they are, Amy replied. But I have a question. What happens if your crystal energy core stops working? That is impossible, Zethkar said quickly. Corvan energy cores do not fail. But what if they did? They do not. Amy looked at Jake. The captain understood what she was getting at. The aliens had built their entire military around technology that never failed. They had no backup plans because they had never needed backup plans. Well, Jake said, I hope you enjoyed your visit. Please tell your people that Earth is honored to be part of the galactic community. Of course, Zethkar replied. Though I must say, Captain, your military seems rather limited. We make do with what we have. After the alien ships left, Jake gathered his senior officers in the conference room. The room was small and cramped, with a metal table and chairs that had been bolted to the floor. So, Jake said, what did everyone think of our guests? They think we are idiots, Lisa said bluntly. I heard them laughing about our welding work. They asked me why we need so many different types of ammunition, Danny added. I told them different targets need different bullets, but I do not think they understood. They do not understand redundancy, Amy said. Their technology is so perfect that they have never considered what happens when it breaks. And that, Jake said, is going to be their biggest mistake. Through the window, they could see the 3 Corvan ships flying away. Their crystalline hulls caught the light from the nearby star and threw it back in brilliant rainbows. They were beautiful, elegant, and completely unprepared for what was coming. Jake had received classified reports from Earth Command. The Corvan hegemony was planning something big. Intelligence suggested they were preparing to take direct control of human space. They had done it to other species before, and now it was humanity's turn. Lisa, Jake said, how are our special modifications coming along? Almost finished, sir. The aliens walked right past them during the inspection. They have no idea what they were looking at. Good. Danny, are your surprises ready? Yes, sir. I have been working on them for months. I think the Corvans are going to be very surprised. Amy, have you finished your analysis of their ship designs? I have identified 17 critical weaknesses. Their ships are incredibly powerful, but they have one major flaw, which is they have never fought anyone who fights dirty. Jake smiled. Humans had been fighting dirty since they first picked up rocks and started throwing them at each other. It was not just a tactic for them. It was an art form. The Defiance continued its patrol route through human space. To any observer, it looked like just another crude human warship, but hidden beneath its ugly exterior were weapons and systems that would soon change the balance of power in the galaxy. Jake stood on his bridge and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, the Corvan hegemony was planning to destroy or enslave his species. They thought humans were weak and primitive. They were about to learn that primitive did not mean helpless, and when that lesson came, it would be delivered with extreme prejudice.